The enemy believed they had spies everywhere, a whole network of secret agents planted in the heart of their opponent's homeland, sending back a steady stream of valuable intelligence. Reports on troop movements, on defenses, on the plans and preparations of the enemy. The information flowed back regularly, was analyzed by intelligence officers, and shaped the decisions of the high command. There was just one problem, a problem so complete and so devastating that it is almost difficult to believe. Every single one of those spies was working for the other side. The entire network was controlled by the enemy they thought they were spying on, and every piece of intelligence they received had been carefully crafted to deceive them. This is the story of one of the most extraordinary intelligence achievements in the history of espionage, a feat of deception so total and so successful that it reshaped the course of the war. It is a story about turning the enemy's own spies against them, about transforming a network meant to gather intelligence into a machine for feeding lies. And it reveals the profound power of controlling not just what your enemy does not know, but what they think they do know, of feeding them false certainties that lead them precisely where you want them to go. To understand the magnitude of this achievement, you have to understand how espionage and intelligence work, and why controlling the enemy's sources of information is so valuable. In war, knowledge is power. Knowing your enemy's plans, their strength, their intentions, gives you an enormous advantage. And so, both sides invest heavily in gathering intelligence, in planting spies, in intercepting communications, in trying to peer behind the veil of the enemy's secrecy. The side with better intelligence can anticipate the enemy's moves, prepare for their attacks, and strike at their weaknesses. Intelligence is one of the most valuable assets in all of warfare. Now consider what happens if you can control the enemy's intelligence, if you can determine what information they receive. This is far more powerful than simply hiding your own secrets. If you control what the enemy knows, you can shape their entire understanding of the situation. You can make them believe things that are not true, lead them to false conclusions, manipulate their decisions by feeding them carefully crafted misinformation. You become, in effect, the author of the enemy's perception of reality. And a commander who acts on a false understanding of reality, who makes decisions based on information you have planted, is a commander you can defeat before the battle even begins. This is exactly what was achieved through the remarkable system at the heart of this story. The achievement began with the capture of enemy agents who had been sent to operate in the opponent's homeland. These agents, planted to gather intelligence and report back, were identified and apprehended. But rather than simply imprisoning them, the counterintelligence service recognized a far greater opportunity. They realized that these captured agents could be turned, could be made to work for the side that had captured them, could be used to send false information back to the enemy who had dispatched them. Instead of merely stopping the enemy's spies, they could transform them into instruments of deception. Now we should be honest about the history here, because this system was real and is genuinely documented as one of the great intelligence triumphs of the war, though we will describe its workings in general terms. What follows is a retelling grounded in the actual existence of this counterintelligence achievement and the real impact it had, told as a narrative to convey its full significance. The core is true. There really was a system by which captured enemy agents were turned and used to feed false intelligence back to the enemy, and it really did achieve remarkable success in deceiving the enemy's high command. The details are recounted to illuminate just how brilliant and effective this deception truly was. The way the system worked was a masterpiece of patient, meticulous deception. The captured agents, now under the control of the counterintelligence service, would continue to send reports back to the enemy. But these reports would be written or dictated by the controllers, filled with information carefully designed to serve the interests of the side now running them. The genius of the system lay in its subtlety and its credibility. For the deception to work, the enemy had to believe that their agents were genuine, that the information they were receiving was real. This required enormous care because the enemy was not foolish and would be alert to signs that their agents had been compromised. To maintain credibility, the false reports had to be carefully calibrated. They could not simply be a stream of lies, because lies that were too convenient or too obviously false would arouse suspicion. So the controllers mixed their deceptions with genuine information, with truths that were either harmless or that the enemy already knew or would soon discover. This blending of truth and falsehood was essential. By providing real, verifiable information alongside the lies, the controllers built up the credibility of their agents, making the false information more believable because it came mixed with truth. The enemy, receiving reports that contained verifiable facts, would trust the agents and therefore trust the lies as well. This is one of the most important principles of effective deception, and it is worth dwelling on. The most convincing lies are those wrapped in truth. A deception that consists entirely of falsehood is fragile, easily exposed when its claims fail to match reality. But a deception that blends truth and falsehood is far more robust, because the truthful elements lend credibility to the false ones, and the whole package becomes difficult to distinguish from genuine intelligence. The controllers of the turned agents understood this principle deeply, and they applied it with extraordinary skill, crafting reports that were credible precisely because they were not entirely false. The system required immense coordination and discipline to maintain. Every report had to be consistent with every other report and with the reality that the enemy could observe. The various turned agents had to tell stories that fit together, that did not contradict one another, that formed a coherent picture. This required careful management, a central coordination of all the deceptions to ensure that they reinforced rather than undermined each other. It was a vast and intricate web of carefully managed lies, sustained over a long period, requiring constant attention to detail and a deep understanding of what the enemy believed and expected. The maintenance of such a system over time was itself a remarkable achievement. The payoff for all this patient work came at the decisive moments of the war, when the false intelligence could be used to shape the enemy's understanding of crucial events. The most important application of the system was in the realm of strategic deception, in misleading the enemy about major operations and intentions. By feeding the enemy false information through their trusted agents, the controllers could influence where the enemy concentrated their forces, what attacks they prepared for, where they expected the decisive blows to fall. The turned agents became a channel through which the enemy could be deceived about the most important matters, their false reports shaping the strategic decisions of the high command. Consider the extraordinary advantage this provided. When planning a major operation, one of the greatest dangers is that the enemy will anticipate it, will concentrate their forces to meet it, will be prepared and waiting. But if you control the enemy's intelligence, you can ensure that they anticipate the wrong thing, that they prepare for an attack that is not coming while remaining vulnerable to the attack that is. The turned agents allowed exactly this kind of manipulation, feeding the enemy false expectations that drew their attention and their forces away from the real operations. It was a way of blinding the enemy while making them believe they could see clearly, of leading them to defend against phantoms while the real blow fell elsewhere. There is a profound principle at work here about the nature of deception and perception. The turned agents did not simply deny the enemy information. They gave the enemy false information that the enemy trusted, and this was far more powerful. An enemy who knows they are blind will proceed cautiously, aware of their ignorance. But an enemy who believes they can see, who trusts their intelligence, will act with confidence based on what they think they know. And if what they think they know is false, that confidence becomes a weapon against them. The turned agents made the enemy confident in a false understanding of reality, and that false confidence led them into errors they would never have made had they known they were being deceived. This points to a deeper truth about the power of controlling perception, a truth that extends far beyond espionage. The way we understand reality shapes our decisions and actions. If someone can control what we believe, they can influence what we do. This is why the manipulation of information and perception is so powerful and so dangerous. The turned agent system was an extreme example of this principle applied to warfare, a case where one side gained the ability to shape the other side's perception of reality and used that ability to lead the enemy into catastrophic errors. It is a sobering demonstration of how vulnerable we are to those who can control the information we receive. Consider, too, the psychological sophistication required to sustain such a deception. The controllers had to think constantly about how the enemy thought, about what the enemy expected, about what would be believable and what would arouse suspicion. They had to anticipate the enemy's reactions, to craft their deceptions in ways that would be accepted, to maintain the elaborate fiction over a long period without making a fatal mistake. This required a deep understanding of the enemy's mind, of their assumptions and expectations and methods. It was a contest of wits, a battle of intelligence and psychology, in which the controllers had to outthink the enemy at every turn to keep the deception alive. It is worth reflecting on the discipline and patience that the system demanded, because these qualities were as important as the cleverness. The deception had to be maintained over a long period with constant attention to consistency and credibility. There must have been countless temptations to use the system too aggressively, to feed the enemy decisive lies too quickly, to exploit the advantage before it was fully ripe. But the value of the system lay in its long-term credibility, in the patient building of trust that would pay off at the decisive moment. This required the discipline to play a long game, to resist the temptation of short-term gains in favor of the greater advantage that patience would provide. It was a triumph not just of cleverness, but of discipline and strategic patience. The success of the turned agent system was, by all accounts, remarkable. The enemy's high command came to rely on the intelligence provided by agents who were actually working against them, basing important decisions on information that had been crafted to deceive them. The deception held, the enemy remained fooled, and at crucial moments, the false intelligence helped to mislead the enemy about major operations, contributing to their defeat. It was an achievement of immense value, one that saved lives and shaped the outcome of the war, accomplished not through force of arms, but through the patient, brilliant manipulation of the enemy's own intelligence network. What makes this story endure is the sheer audacity and brilliance of the concept, the idea that you could take the enemy's own spies and turn them into a machine for feeding lies. It captures something essential about the nature of intelligence warfare, about the profound power of controlling perception and information. The turned agent system was not a weapon of steel and explosives, but a weapon of mind and deception, and it proved that such weapons could be every bit as decisive as any tank or aircraft. It stands as a testament to the power of human ingenuity in the realm of the mind, to the devastating effectiveness of a well-crafted deception. By the time the war ended, the turned agent system had earned its place among the great intelligence achievements in history. A feat of deception so complete and so successful that it reshaped the course of major operations. The enemy had believed they had a network of valuable spies, when in fact they had a network of deception controlled entirely by their opponents. They had acted on intelligence they trusted, never knowing that every piece of it had been crafted to deceive them. It was a triumph of perception over reality, of cleverness over force, a demonstration that in war, controlling what the enemy believes can be as powerful as controlling the battlefield itself. So remember the enemy who believed they had spies everywhere, sending back valuable intelligence, never knowing that every one of those spies was working for the other side. Remember the brilliant deception that turned the enemy's own network into a machine for feeding lies, that fed them false certainties and led them into catastrophic errors. And remember the profound truth at the heart of it all, that controlling what your enemy believes is one of the most powerful weapons there is, that the most convincing lies are those wrapped in truth, and that a battle can be won not only by force of arms, but by the patient, brilliant manipulation of the enemy's understanding of reality itself.